Kentucky's got one more scholarship to add to their 2024-25 roster, and it very well could come in the form of five-star Will Riley.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be answering a listener question about how Kentucky could choose to fill out their final scholarship on their roster. Right now, five-star Will Riley is taking a visit to Kentucky. Could he reclassify and end up with the Wildcats? Also on today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we get to talk about my favorite thing, college basketball and numbers. We're going to get to talk a little bit about Torvik projections. Bart Torvik, a major analytics website. What do they think about Mark Pope and the Wildcats, their individual players, and overall their product on offense and defense? I think it's going to be very interesting to see where Pope and company project out. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed to the show, and if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Will Kentucky basketball utilize Will Riley as their final scholarship here on their roster? In case you don't know, Will Riley, a five-star in the 2025 class, a 6'9" small forward who is looking to potentially reclassify to 2024 and commit to possibly the Kentucky Wildcats, or maybe somebody like the Illinois Fighting Illini. Right now, Kentucky is hosting him on a visit. He posted earlier today on his social media that he was inside Rupp Arena. Looks really awkward and barren without the hardwood flooring, just a concrete floor with all the seats kind of pushed back. It's very weird to see it in that state, but nevertheless, Riley was there. And we got a listener question. I asked you guys on yesterday's episode to leave listener questions here on the YouTube channel to kind of give me some thoughts maybe you have that I can discuss on a episode coming up soon. You guys had some great questions. I would encourage you to please continue to add questions. If you're listening to this episode on podcast, at Locked On UK is where you can drop a question if you want to there. Russell Coyne over on YouTube said, who will the 13th scholarship go to? Also, I believe making a minimum of an Elite Eight would be a great season, because I talked about that recently on an episode. And he said, P.S. as long as Arkansas doesn't finish better. First of all, I think Elite Eight would be very, very sweet for Mark Pope and company. Would be just absolutely phenomenal, through the roof. I think making it to the second weekend period, I think would be really, really awesome, but that's a conversation for another day. But he asks here, who will the 13th scholarship go to? And right now, I think that the scholarship, if you had to pick, there's only one man that the scholarship could go to that we are aware of, and that is Will Riley, the five-star, again, in this 2025 class. In case you didn't see it, Uga Poplar, a player that Kentucky has been pursuing, has committed to Villanova. So Poplar out of Miami is officially out of the question. So Kentucky is essentially Will Riley or bust. As of today with Will Riley, he is taking a visit to Kentucky. He will take a visit to Illinois on Monday and then take a visit to Alabama on Thursday, according to 24/7 Sports. Again, a 6'9" small forward looking to potentially reclassify, and that decision, according to KSR, could come after his visits wrap up. Kentucky would take him in either class. This was a player that Kentucky recruited heavily underneath Coach Cal, and now that Pope and company have gotten their hands on the program, they are continuing to recruit him to come to Lexington. And if you've heard me talk about Riley on the show before, I need to talk about him again here quickly, about how he operates and just how good I personally think he is. This may be the most fascinating prospect that we have talked about on this YouTube channel. In the almost 3 years that I've been doing this, this is easily the most intriguing player I've seen come out of the high school ranks in Will Riley. He is the number 15 overall prospect nationally. He's the number 3 small forward and number 2 player in the state of Pennsylvania. On3 is the only recruiting website to have him rated as a 5-star. And even though that is the case, the composite ratings still show him as a 5-star because of just how highly On3 rated him relative to everybody else. The average pushed him up to a 5-star. If you look on 24/7 Sports, their specific player rating, they have him as the number 21 overall player in a 4-star, number 3 small forward, number 2 player in the state of Pennsylvania. 6'9", 180 pounds, out of Pennsylvania, out of the Phelps School in Pennsylvania. And I want to talk to you for a second about something that we've discussed recently already, about just how good he has been at the Phelps School and how good he was last year during Nike's EYBL circuit. So earlier this season, earlier this season, through 18 games with the Phelps School, Riley was averaging 26.7 points per game, 6.2 rebounds, and 4.2 assists per contest. He's scoring 1.06 points per possession while shooting 49.9% from the field and 46.4% from three. That is insane efficiency for such a high scoring output. It's been really, really impressive, and we talked about it on the show a bunch recently about how he likes to operate. He's not a big outside shooter. He doesn't like to chuck a ton of threes relative to what he does on the inside. Now, he does take almost 5 threes a game, but he's taken a ton of shots to begin with, so he likes to operate more often in the mid-range and at the rim. His style of play, the way he handles the basketball, which he certainly can, the way that he likes to get to his spots, it's calm, it's decisive, but there are these herky-jerky moments that Will Riley has to kind of contort his body and to get himself into a position to create some space where you just don't typically see players of his height and stature do things that he does in terms of just physically trying to get open. He'll go under people. He'll go through people. He'll go over people. He'll lean away. He'll lean in. It's so weird how he kind of utilizes his upper body to kind of get around and get to different spots with the ball in his hand. And it's extremely effective, or at least it was this past season with his high school. And then he did sort of replicate those numbers again during the EYBL circuit. Through 14 games last summer, Riley averaged 21.4 points, 4.1 rebounds, and 3.1 assists while shooting 53.8% from the field. He was shooting 41% from three through his last 32 games and 51.3% from the field. So really, really, really good numbers through his last 32 games. Really good numbers from the EYBL circuit. Excellent, excellent player who also is phenomenal when it comes to creating things off of the dribble. He's shooting 46.4% from three, like I mentioned, 41.7% in catch and shoot situations, and then almost 50%, 48.9% in off the dribble threes. That is just an insane statistic. I cannot accurately describe without getting to show you, which we can't show videos on the channel, getting to show you just how hard it is to shoot essentially 9% better, creating things off balance, off the dribble, off your own abilities to shoot 8% better than you do just standing still, catching and shooting the ball. That shows potential, that shows talent, that shows a very, 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 very high upside, especially with his height. You get to what he's doing on the EYBL circuit so far. Through 15 games played this year, he's still averaging 21.9 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.6 assists. He's shooting 49.6% overall, but his three-point percentage has gone down. He's shooting less than 32% from deep. He's shooting 31.7%. He plays for UPlay. He's going to get to play in Peach Jam in July. It's going to be super, super exciting to see what he does at Peach Jam, actually. I kind of want to go to Peach Jam. But point being here, Riley is a very special prospect. Very high upside, very high potential when it comes to efficiency, and somebody that could really operate well, I think, in Mark Pope's offense as somebody that could primarily handle the ball or be extremely efficient off ball. He's proven the ability to do both. Right now, his finalists include Arizona, Arkansas, Alabama, Kentucky, and the NBL, which is in Australia, I believe. Arizona and Arkansas have not scheduled visits with Will Riley. In Illinois, a team that's not in his top 5, he has scheduled a visit with, and that's because of Orlando, who was previously on Kentucky staff. So Kentucky right now, I think that this is the player you have to go and get. This is the player that you have to go and try and secure for next season. Will Riley, 5-star. You asked the question, who's going to be the 13th scholarship right now? This is the only player that we are aware of that Kentucky could go out and possibly get. Jamie Vinson, the 3-star center, I believe he committed to Texas. If I'm not mistaken, he committed elsewhere. So this is your guy. This is your dude. If Mark Pope is able to land this kid and able to keep him through this season and heading into the 25-26 season, man, oh man, that's got to be that he's going to be a special player. That's all I got to say. He is easily my favorite prospect we've talked about, just because of how efficient and how just out of the box he is when it comes to scoring the ball. It's unique. It's very cool. So let me know what you think in the comments below about Will Riley, about who you think Kentucky will get with their final scholarship, if he will reclassify. I want to talk here for a second about some Torvik projections. We're not going to talk necessarily a ton of numbers, but I do want to show you where one of the biggest analytics sites in college basketball has Kentucky projected on both offense, defense, and overall relative to some other SEC programs. Before we get into that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. The NBA Finals are officially here. It's going to be super fun between the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. Kentucky Wildcat PJ Washington has been on point throughout the Mavericks' run to the finals. He's been super entertaining. One of Dallas's most important pieces. I've absolutely loved watching Kentucky's players play through the NBA Finals. And let's say you want to go see PJ in person, or you're a huge Mavericks or Celtics fan and you want to be able to go and check out the NBA playoffs. Well, Game Time is the place to go get tickets. They make getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier, and the prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. They take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. They don't have tickets, by the way, for just NBA Finals. They've got tickets for all different kinds of events: sports, concerts, comedy, theater, anything near you. I have loved using Game Time for MLB tickets, for college football tickets, for NBA tickets. I cannot wait to get to go to another Braves game here in the next couple of weeks and get to check out Game Time, utilize those tickets that they've got on there. It's super quick and easy to get in, get out of the app. There are no hidden fees. It's all right there. They've got phenomenal photos from your seats so that you can know exactly what it's going to look like when you step into the ballpark or to the arena. I would highly encourage you guys to go check out Game Time. There is no better place to go get your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying your NBA tickets with Game Time by downloading the Game Time app, creating an account, and using code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, continuing along here on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you went ahead and did so. And again, if you've got any questions for the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, at Locked On UK on Twitter or over here in the comments section is where you can drop them. Also, if you want to join the Locked On Kentucky Discord, it is pinned at the top of my Twitter, at @LanceDawe_ is the link to join. It is free. It's just a place for anybody to chat about anything going on with Kentucky basketball, football, baseball, volleyball, anything you want to talk about Kentucky sports related. It is happening over there, at @LanceDawe_ on Twitter. Okay. There were a couple of different analytic websites that I really, really like to use to help you guys kind of identify different things that were going on throughout college basketball last season. It's super, super fun to not necessarily sit here and read off numbers, but talk about kind of what they mean in the context of game-by-game breakdowns and what they mean for projections and kind of how it demonstrates what we see on the courts and kind of puts things on paper and helps us categorize different things. It's really, really, I think, one of the more entertaining and useful sports analytics tools. I think that college basketball definitely does lend itself to a ton of different statistics that you can dive into that actually mean something, that you can actually take something away from. And sites like KenPom that we've talked about a ton, sites like Hasla, sites like Bart Torvik, which we're going to talk about today, they really do a phenomenal job of putting things together to kind of show you what certain teams are good at. And it sometimes is not always reflected in the style of play that you see on TV, and sometimes you need a little bit more of an in-depth breakdown. And Torvik has released their 2025 T-Rank college basketball projections. Right now, Houston is the best team, according to Torvik, heading into the 2024-2025 season. Kansas is number 2. Iowa State is number 3. And you get to see the adjusted offensive efficiency projection and the adjusted defensive efficiency projection. So what those numbers basically mean is just how efficient their offense or defense is on a game-by-game basis in terms of ranking nationally. And in case you don't know, there are over 360 Division I teams. So if I tell you a team's in the top 100, they're in the top third of the country. Still pretty good. If I tell you they're in the top 40, they're really good. If I tell you they're in the top 20, that's elite. That's very, very, very good. They're very good at that thing. Iowa State is projected to have the they are projected to have the best defense, but the 47th best offense. That's good enough for third in the country because of just how good their defense is. It also shows Torvik a projected record for every single team. It also shows returning minutes for every single team. And then there's also a projected effective talent rating, which quite frankly, I don't fully understand, which I don't think is going to be relevant for us here today. They also have projected effective experience, which I think will also be will be sort of effective for us here today. So, where does Kentucky rank? Well, you start to look down the list. You see Tennessee at number 7. You see Alabama at number 10. Auburn at number 11. You start to work your way down here. Texas at number 14. Mississippi State with a very balanced offense and defense inside the top 25, ranked number 15. Continue to go down here. You've got Texas A&M at 26, which I just simply don't understand at all. And then you have Kentucky, ranked number 30 in the projected Torvik ratings. Kentucky projected to have the 25th best offense in the country, which is very good, and the 57th best defense in the nation, which is also very good. It's not national championship caliber, that defense, but it's literally, I think, half in terms of like Kentucky's defense was rated like what, 110th nationally a season ago. It's literally they've just essentially jumped 50 spots in a projection with a roster that has not hit the floor yet. I think that's a really, really good sign of what could be. I think that Kentucky will probably outplay these projections to an extent, is what I'm trying to say here. And then it shows projected record. It has Kentucky going 19-12 and 9-9 in the SEC, despite being the 30th best team in the nation. What does that tell you? Forget the 19-12. What does that tell you? Don't focus on the fact that it's 19-12. What does 7 games better than 500 and being the 30th best team in the nation, with really good projected offense and defense it tells you that the SEC is going to be really stinking hard this year. It tells you the SEC is going to be a rough place to play. The defense, I think, will probably be the best it's been in I don't know how long. This conference as a whole is going to play very good defense, I think. And when you look at the teams that are bringing in transfers, you start to see some interesting guard play as well for some of these different teams. Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee with Chaz Lanier, Kentucky, they've got some really good guards coming in. Texas A&M with Wade Taylor, they've got good guards. Florida, Ole Miss brought in a plethora of new transfers to play in their backcourt. This is a very, very good top-to-bottom conference. Ole Miss, by the way, ranked number 32nd with the 12th best offense in the nation. They're going to be good. This is going to be a very, very, very tough conference for Kentucky to get out of successfully. If Kentucky is able to get past that 24-win mark, that will be really, really impressive. That will be super impressive because of not only is Kentucky going to be dealing with the SEC slate, they're also going to be dealing with the non-conference slate, which, as we have started to realize, oh man, it's going to include Duke, Gonzaga, Ohio State, whoever Kentucky plays in the SEC ACC Challenge. If that's North Carolina, woo. It's going to be a rough go in terms of schedule. But what gives me confidence and what gives me hope is that I think Kentucky can genuinely outplay these projections because they are projections of a roster that has not been seen. And on paper, to me, when you look at the way that this thing is constructed, it looks good. I think it looks well-rounded, and I think Kentucky's defense will actually prove to be a little bit better than that top 60 ranking. You also look at returning minutes here. You get to see the percentage of returning minutes for all these different teams. You'll see teams hovering somewhere between 30 to 70% in terms of returning minutes. Kentucky sitting at a solid 0.1%. Just 0.1% here if you scroll down the list. And that may honestly be lowest in the nation. We'll just scroll down all the way here. No, there are actually a few different teams that have no returning minutes. Obviously, Arkansas. You know what I should have thought of that. Arkansas and Louisville have nothing returning. So Arkansas, Louisville, two teams on Kentucky's schedule. Man, it's going to be interesting to see those three teams, or Kentucky see Kentucky play those two teams. And then also experience. Adjusted, projected, effective experience. And I think this is like a year average per player on roster that is actually projected to be in the rotation and be effective. Kentucky's averaged 2.5 years, which is really solid. That's really high. It's a lot higher than what it normally is in the Calipari era. So 19-12, but a top 30 team, just raw for a product that has not been seen yet. That's pretty dang good. That is pretty dang good. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.